Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Facebook Live. I'm really excited about today's conversation as it's something so important that we can all be sharing with our family members, the men in our lives, our sons, our uncles, and just any other men that we come in contact with who we really care about and feel like this mission of his breast cancer needs to be shared with. So I'm very excited about introducing brother and sister, a dynamic duo, Harvey and Vicky, and they are both the co-founders of His Breast Cancer Awareness, an organization that's bringing attention to male breast cancer. So thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
Amazing. So I think we should just get into it and start with the journey that led each of you to start His Breast Cancer Awareness. Vicky, I know you both have a story, so maybe we'll start with you and then we can turn it over to Harvey.
Okay, sounds great. So I have a history of breast cancer that dates back to 1997, pretty much when I began. I was at 37, at 39, I was diagnosed twice with DCIS. Our mother and our aunt were both diagnosed with breast cancer when they were in their 70s. So I just kind of thought, I don't really have to worry about this again until I'm older. I don't know why I was having, these diagnoses at a young age. At 48, unfortunately, I was diagnosed again. It was a little bit more invasive. But because I was doing scans and checking, we found things pretty quickly. So at that point in time, I had radiation. I went on tamoxifen, and I had first learned about genetic screening and about the BRCA genetic mutation. So I went ahead and had the testing done. And it wasn't just about testing for me at that point. It was testing because, I have 3 sons, and down the road, maybe there'll be a vaccine where we're getting closer to that. But, back then it was just, it's just good information to have for my children and grandchildren and so on down the line. I found out at that point that I carry the BRCA2 genetic mutation. I also had a full hysterectomy, and I really thought that I had done kind of enough. I hadn't done the mastectomy, but at that point, I was doing so much that I really thought I was well ahead of the game. Unfortunately, 10 years later at 58, I was diagnosed again and did go ahead and have a double mastectomy and needed chemotherapy at that point as well. And I do take an aromatase inhibitor.
Okay.
But when I was tested, I shared that with my family members, and that includes 2 brothers. And, my brother, they heard, they thought breast cancer, not something they would have to worry about, even though the BRCA2 genetic mutation does, put you at higher risk for prostate cancer and pancreatic and melanoma and others. They were thinking breast, since that's what I was dealing with. And so they heard me, but didn't pay a whole lot of attention. Unfortunately, about a year and a half later, Harvey called me and said, I think I feel something, and I'll let him share the rest of his story at that point in time. But, what we discovered was there wasn't a lot of information, if anything, out there on men dealing with breast cancer, men in general with BRCA mutation and hereditary cancers. And we just felt we wanted something to be different for our sons. Harvey has 2 boys in between us, 5 sons. We just wanted the stigma that goes along with male breast cancer. Everything is pink, pink, pink. And we wanted to make some changes to that. So it's been a long haul for me, for my family, watching me go through what I have. Our mother and our aunt both lived well into, she was just shy of turning 95, and our aunt 103. So
wow, amazing.
BRCA2, a genetic mutation doesn't mean it's a death sentence. It just means it's information that is important for you to have and helpful. And it's, it's educational. So that's, I'm feeling great. I'm living life as best I can. I mean, you do always feel like you're kind of waiting for that next shoe to drop, because I am at higher risk for other cancers. And I do sort of feel like now that I've had that mastectomy, my body always said, make breast cancer, make breast cancer. Now what's going to happen? Where's it going
Right.
to go? Do I know where to look for it? You know, that's the fear. And that's kind of why I held off on that last final mastectomy, you know, part to it all, because it in some ways, it brought me some comfort, you know, doing surveillance, getting checked every 6 months, feeling like I'm on top of it. And now there's a little bit of that, you know, you lose some of that control. But I've always been into a healthy lifestyle. I'm not a vegetarian, but more plant-based diet, minimal alcohol, very minimal sugar. You know, exercise is a large part of my day. It's a part of my profession as well, for what I do when I'm not working with his breast cancer. And I think that helped me through a lot of the chemotherapy and treatments that I was going through, to keep me strong. So yeah, you know, you can get through these things. It's life, but you know, it sets us back a little bit, but you can rebuild. And as I have done, and Harvey has done as well. So I'll let him share.
Thank you, Vicki.
Okay, so Vicky warned me and I ignored her because that's what guys do. Because guys in general are not keen on, most guys are not keen on keeping track of their health. They think they're strong and they don't have to worry about stuff. They don't like going to the doctor. I wasn't quite like that. I actually liked going to the doctor. Not liked it, but I went when I needed to. But I didn't think that I would get hit with breast cancer. And then I did discover a small lump under my left nipple. I was with a bunch of guys in Chicago, and one of the guys I was with hugged me. When he hugged me, I got a pain that shot from my nipple right into my ear, like somebody stuck a knife into me. So when I got back, I went and saw my internist, and she took about 2 minutes to feel around. She goes, "I'm sending you for a mammogram." At the time, I was like, "Well, how can a guy do a mammogram?" She goes, "Don't worry, they'll do it." And it was a Friday afternoon. She said, "We're going to go get it looked at right now because I don't want you to think about it all weekend." So I went over to the imaging center. I had a mammogram followed by an ultrasound, figured out that it was probable. The following Tuesday, I went for a biopsy, and yes, I was diagnosed with male breast cancer.
Wow.
I had surgery a few weeks later, a full mastectomy of my left breast. I didn't remove my right breast at the time prophylactically. I wasn't prepared to make that decision retrospectively. I probably should have done that to be bilateral, but I didn't make that at that time. I went through surgery. I went through 3.5 months of chemotherapy, the same regimen that actually Vicki went through, 10 years later, I guess. This was 2008. 18 months later, I was diagnosed with early onset prostate cancer. Both cancers were caused by the BRCA2 mutation. I actually think I had the prostate cancer first, but I was under the watchful eye of a urologist who I had a biopsy, but it came up negative. And I'll warn guys, you can have a prostate biopsy and be negative and still have prostate cancer because prostate biopsies are not exact. They're taking pieces from all over your prostate. After going through both, Vicki and I just said, we got to do something to change it. Because when I was trying to figure out what to do about my male breast cancer, we found that there was really no information for guys. There's a lot of breast cancer information out there for women, but nothing for guys. And the diseases are similar, but they are not identical. And most of these cancers are hormonally driven, and guys and women produce different hormones at different levels. So we just said, we have to do something to change this. We have 5 boys between us, and we have to change the rules and give somebody some information, somewhere to go to get some direction on how to handle this. Because most guys get diagnosed with this and they're spinning. They're not expecting anything like this. They don't know what to do. They just start, okay, I'll do whatever my doctor tells me. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not good. When they decided I needed to have chemotherapy, I actually saw 4 different oncologists and had 3 totally different regimens for chemotherapy. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to understand your disease. When people contact us, the first thing I tell them is, this is your new most important full-time job. You have to learn everything about your disease. You have to learn how it affects the rest of your family. You have to be genetically screened to see if you're carrying a mutation that can cause other cancers. or that you could pass down to your children. Each child of our 5 is 50-50 to carry this mutation. And like Vicky said, it's not a death sentence. It's information that helps you navigate the waters. So we've spent the last 10 years making this a primary part of our life and helping other people navigate it. And it's been very rewarding. I tell people all the time, I still work full time. I said, I have 2 jobs, one that pays me and one that rewards me. Every time we can help somebody get through this a little easier, they come back to us and they're so grateful. So it makes us just appreciate what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're definitely shining a light on a topic that's very, underspoken about. But one thing that you mentioned was really about the genetic and hereditary component to these cancers, and making sure your children get screened, right? We're talking about both sons and daughters, but also that it's not a death sentence. And on the JScreen panel of cancer susceptibility genes, all of the 63 genes have actionable next steps, which is so important for everyone to know, right? So whether it's BRCA and you choose to undergo a preventative mastectomy, or you just choose to get more frequent mammograms, or with some of the other genes, it's about starting earlier colonoscopies and getting them more frequently. So not everything is prophylactic surgery. And I really think it's important for everyone to understand that if you get screened with this genetic test ahead of time, you can even catch cancer right at a very early stage or before you're even ever diagnosed. And it's more of a preventative tool. So there is something that can be done, especially with hereditary cancers. And there's many families, as you both mentioned, right? Like your mother and your aunt, like cancer runs in families, right? Especially with the hereditary cancer. So if there's something we can do to stop it, I think that's pretty remarkable. And I know that you're focused on prevention and early detection and treatment. So maybe you can give some useful tips that we can help others share to help save a life of one of their loved ones.
That's what I was going to say, Hillary. On our website, which is hisbreastcancer.org, there is actually a tutorial for anybody, male or female, but it is imaged for a male, to take away some of the stigma that goes along with male breast cancer. In the world of pink, we're a little bit of, we add some blue to our pink. And there's directions how to perform a self-breast exam. Something very simple that men don't realize they can do themselves, or ask their girlfriend or wife to help them with, and hopefully women are doing it as well. And it's so important for the men especially to detect anything early. Women, at least, they see their gynecologist, they go for a yearly mammogram, or every 6 months or whatever they're doing, breast MRIs. But for men, most often no one's checking their breast, even at their physical. And so it's very important to learn how to be familiar with your own breast tissue, and notice anything that's changed, or should there be any release through the nipple if they see any leakage or inversion. So learning and becoming familiar with some of the symptoms for early detection is so critical. Obviously, this is in addition to being screened, having that information, knowing, in advance what your risk factors are, what a higher risk, if you are at a higher risk. But even just familiar, if you just have a family history and you come back even without a mutation, showing, you're at a little bit higher risk. And we also, Harvey and I have been involved in a documentary. It's called Pink and Blue: Colors of Hereditary Cancer.
Oh, wow.
It's available to stream. We have that information also available on our website, but on Apple TV, can be streamed. And it's about men and women and families that have been exposed to genetic testing, and how it affects the whole family.
Right, exactly.
Sons and daughters, mothers, the parents who feel guilty for passing that down to a child, that they've passed this mutation on, and yet, not that they had any control, not that we have any control for our sons, but it is the fact, and it is information. So just having that knowledge, I think what you said was it's not about surgeries and preventive surgeries necessarily. It's about early testing, maybe having my sons had their first mammogram when they turned 35.
Wow.
And they will continue, to do that. And it's knowledge, it's information.
Are
I'll go
they
into a little
sharing
more
that information with their friends, your sons, right? So they're young, like who are they talking about this? Because I feel like there's just some sort of disconnect between getting these conversations happening more frequently, even just in families, right? Like if everyone told pass this information along to their family members, we could prevent a lot of cancer, or detect it early, but also with our friends.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that.
We don't have
I
a
mean,
problem talking
yeah.
about it. And we share, to any stranger on the street, if we have a conversation that,
Yeah.
it comes up. But my sons, I think that if they start talking about me or their uncle, then the conversation is there. I'm not sure that in just general that it's on the front of their brains like it is on ours, because
Yeah.
thankfully also they haven't experienced it. So,
Right.
when you're not a cancer survivor and you haven't walked in those shoes, you have just a different sense, than somebody who hasn't.
I think they've experienced it though through us. I mean, they've lived with you going through, 4 surgeries, me going through 2 surgeries. I think they've experienced that. I think that's a good point though, Hillary. I don't think that they probably don't openly have those conversations with their friends unless they're asked about it or decide to talk about it. I mean, my sons at least wear their HIS wristband, and then hope that people will ask them what it's about and then they can talk about it. I don't think it's part of the normal conversations with them, but they're certainly aware and educated. I just wanted to go back a little bit on the screening thing. I tell this to guys because I'm in my mid 60s, almost late 60s in a couple more weeks, I guess. I cross that 67 threshold. That you get this annual physical, hopefully, for most guys. And the one thing they don't check, as Vicky alluded to, is if you're a female and you go for your physical, your gynecologist, your doctor will check your breasts. If you're a guy, they almost never do that, but they will do it if you ask them. So,
Really
we try and preach it. Yeah, just say, while I'm here for my physical, I mean, you're going to do a digital rectal exam to feel your prostate. And it's less invasive than that. Let up your breasts for any abnormalities in there. The other thing is they kind of do, especially when you cross the 50 threshold, is they'll start running PSA tests regularly.
Right.
And we've given out a lot of false information. People think, oh, if my PSA is below 4, I'm good. But that number is very, very circumstantial. It's really not about that number. It's about the change, what we call the velocity in that number. So if you're 3.1 and a year later you're 3.8, that's an alarm clock, ding, ding, ding. The velocity changed. It shouldn't jump more than a half a point in a year. So I tell people all the time, yes, start with, whatever number you have as a baseline. And then if it goes up in a year, more than a half a point, you want to start looking at it a little bit more closely. And I had a PSA over 13 and they still hadn't detected my prostate cancer. So it's not always about that number, but that's a good place to start, the change in velocity. So something that all guys should know, keep an eye on that PSA number. And if it changes, jumps more than half a point, that's something that, should set off a little bit of an information alarm for you and say, okay, what's next? What can I do next? Because no guys raising their hand say, please give me a prostate biopsy, because it's not a lot of fun.
Right.
So nobody, they try and avoid that if they can, and I'm not saying you should do that because you jump, but you should, have that information. I just actually made an appointment yesterday for my annual EUS screening. Obviously our mutation likes to cause pancreatic cancer. If you're, and this is not a cheap test, and it's not a test that a lot of insurance companies like to authorize, but if you have a history, they will. And basically it's an endoscopic ultrasound. They go down through you have a colonoscopy, which I'm also having at the same time, goes the other way. The endoscope goes down your throat. They have a little camera on the end of it. It scans your pancreas for any lesions. So if you're carrying a mutation, and that's like, nobody wants to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And the main reason it's so fatal is because it's asymptomatic.
Right.
You don't know you have it until it's too late. And then usually by then it's stage 4 and it's spread to multiple organs. So the only time people have success with pancreatic cancer treatment is when they detect it extremely early. And there's two ways to do that, through an EUS or through an MRI. So if you think you have susceptibility, if there's pancreatic cancer in your family, if there's a history of pancreatic cancer, even if you don't know your genetic predisposition, you might want to talk to your doctor about having, an annual EUS, just to make sure that you catch that early if it does manifest. Anyway, so just a couple other screenings that you should do. I mean,
Yeah.
BRCA2 mutations cause melanoma. Go to your dermatologist, do an annual body screen. I do, Vicky does. We're looking for any moles, any changes, anything changes like that. And unfortunately, us Ashkenazi Jews, we have this in our history.
10
Ashkenazi
times
Jews are the
more
number one.
common than the general
Yeah.
population to be a BRCA carrier. Yeah.
There you go. So you know the facts.
Something that you said, Harvey, really stood out. You were saying, if you have a family history, but I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that even if you don't have a family history of cancer, you can still, have a mutation in one of these cancer genes. And it's so important, family history or not, that you're being tested. And nowadays, right, testing is so easy. It's literally an at-home saliva test that we send a person.
Right.
It couldn't be any easier than that. And at least start with that. And then you can start making your derm appointments and for your full body checks and doing things proactively. And a lot of women say, oh, I'm at the helm of the healthcare for my family. But men really need to start, advocating for themselves and becoming proactive for their own health and the health of their family. But this is, it's easy enough to schedule a doctor's appointment or, what nowadays there's plenty of information out there and resources and tools just like yours to help people navigate this health system, this really what could be scary as like a cancer landscape. But I think your resources are incredible. And I just really applaud you for what you're doing and bringing male breast cancer to the forefront. So thank you so much. And anyone, we'll post the link to your website, but it's hisbreastcancer.org. And you can also follow them on social media as well.
I know sometimes people ask at what age should I have genetic testing completed, and what's recommended currently for men, for young adults, would be around age 35 or when they are ready to start a family. Yeah. There are other options if you want to go those route, and I guess and can afford to go that route, that alternate route, where you can remove that mutation from
From
through
embryo,
IVF.
right?
Yeah, IVF.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
But otherwise, we're looking, at around age 35 or when you're ready to start a family, so that you have that information in advance. I mean, obviously, you can do that, can be done earlier, but that's the recommended age at this time. So.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. Vicky, Harvey, you've been very, very, this information is beyond incredible, and what you're doing is incredible, and just wishing you both just sustained health, and for you and all of your family members.
Thank you. We appreciate all that JScreen is doing out there, and I know it's gonna save lives, just like his breast cancer is. We're all about the same thing, just keeping people healthy and giving them information and saving lives.
Perfect. Thank you both. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.